Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tip of the Week. We're just going to finish up here with the topic of storyboarding, and so this one is about exporting options. So basically, Storyboard Pro is not just about drawing and doing animatics, it's about the whole pipeline and how you can use what you do in Storyboard Pro in the next stage in the pipeline. Let's take a look here at a scene file that was very nicely donated to us by these guys who in Montreal who do a show called Life on the Block in English. It's a bilingual show, so the French version of it is called Vie de Quartier. So they have nicely enough donated us this scene file that we can use for the purpose of doing some demos and showing how people tend to work in Storyboard Pro. And these scene files are extremely detailed and very clean. So sometimes you'll see very clean storyboards when they're going overseas to do the animation because they don't want any guesswork in the size of the characters and the orientation, whether the characters are on model. It's extremely important that the storyboards look very nice and very clean. And you'll also see here that following what we were talking about last week, there are a number of the items that we were talking about with regards to the animatic. So in this one, we can see that there is some animation on the camera. So we have a zoom in on the camera there. We also have animation on the characters. So here the father character is zooming in or becoming larger to indicate him walking towards the camera. And then we have animations on other characters throughout. And some of the animations are done just by using the transform tool, like that father moving in. And then there will be some, panels here, or some scenes that have multiple panels to describe the motion. So let's take a look at this outdoor scene here. If we play through it, we have an animation on the movement of the father with the wheelbarrow there. And then we have a few different panels indicating something going on. So there's new drawings for the child being in the seat there and then going up in the seat and then him being surprised. And then we switch to a new camera angle and we see what it is that he's being surprised about. So this is all bringing everything together into one, and I think that's kind of interesting for you guys to see what a real storyboard looks like. Not a real storyboard, not that mine aren't real, but an actual customer storyboard. And this one is very clean, and some of them are not so clean. I mean, some are very dirty or not so detailed. It really varies from studio to studio on what kind of look that they have in the end is. And storyboarding and Storyboard Pro can be used not just for animation in the case of this one, but also for planning things for live action. So in other words, you're going to go out and shoot a TV show with cameras, out there in the real world, then you can plan what you're going to do before you do it in Storyboard Pro as well. And we do have some storyboard artists like Mark Simon that do a lot of live action storyboarding in our software. So you can see we do have some tutorials on YouTube, by the way, by Mark Simon. There's also tutorials on our website by Sherm Cohen, who did some of the storyboarding for SpongeBob, among many other things. So definitely take a look at those tutorials when you have a chance. But just to finish up with this tip on exporting options, now that we have our project done, the first thing we usually export to is the PDF. And there are some different preset PDF formats that are in there by default. 3-panel, vertical, and horizontal are the most common ones used. There's also the Japanese format that I was showing to some Japanese people the other day that is loaded by default into Storyboard Pro 3D. But basically, you can take any one of these profiles and you can edit the profile to change the options. So if I want to have 4 rows instead of 3, and there's all kinds of different options that you can adjust. You can add an image on the cover. Most people want to change the image in the header because the image in the header is the typical Storyboard Pro or typical Toon Boom header image. So you can always change that to your own studio or your own company's image there. And you can change the font and the labeling on the different panels and so on. So there's many different things you can do, but sometimes people get a little overwhelmed by the PDF options. So that's why in newer versions we've added the PDF View Workspace. And if you switch over to the PDF View Workspace, then from here you have the ability to see a preview there of what the panels look like. And you can also select a few panels. So let's just select 3 panels here. And then I can select the profile that I'm interested in checking out. So I've got the 3-panel vertical profile there selected. You can edit the options directly in here, and then you can preview or export. So let's just preview those 3 panels and check out what it looks like. So now if I zoom out of here, if I do the preview, I can check out, okay, the font and the sizing is correct. I see those things. The title of this project is very long, so it's kind of going over the edge there. So you might want to adjust the size of the font on the title, or you might choose to hide the number of pages, or move the number of pages to the bottom, various different things. If you have difficulty achieving the look that you want in your PDF, then you can feel free to write into Toon Boom, and we can help you to get the look that you want. Because I know that it sometimes can be confusing navigating the PDF options in there. And so other than the PDF, though, there are a couple of other options that you probably want to take a look at. So one of them is the export to movie. And you can export the entire movie, and one of the things that's kind of cool is being able to put a time code on there, or the scene names and the panel names. And also the project safeties. So if you're using this QuickTime movie as reference, then it's a good idea to put the time code on there so that you can go back and check what scene file you need to look at. And in addition to doing that, you can also export just one movie clip per scene. And this is useful for if you're going to go into a software that we haven't thought of yet. So in other words, if you're going from Storyboard Pro to After Effects or something like that, then you could export one movie clip per scene, and you could import that movie clip as a reference file to then work with on top of that. And in addition to that, though, we do have other export options to go to different softwares. The Edl Aaf and XML option will take you to Final Cut Pro, Avid, or Premiere. And there are different ways that it works in different scenarios. So in the case of Final Cut, and this works with Final Cut before Final Cut X works differently. So we don't have the support for Final Cut X, but with the previous versions of Final Cut, you can have all of the separated image files as different layers that you can work with, and you have the camera moves, so you can make adjustments on everything. If you're going to Premiere, then you have exported movie files. And I actually do have another project of mine. It's from the Key project. It's going to become some demo materials that we'll use here at Toon Boom. This is a 2D, 3D mix project. But I have a working edit of that one in Premiere, so I'm just going to open up Premiere and take a look at that project with you guys so you can see what the Premiere export looks like from Storyboard Pro and how you work with it from then on out. Because this whole aspect of pipeline is not just about what you're doing in Storyboard Pro, but it's about what are you going to do next. So there's 2 things that you're going to do next. One thing is you're going to get started on a working edit, and then the second thing is you're going to go back and do some animation, or you're going to go out and shoot some film if you're doing it in live action. So for the first working edit, in the case of Premiere here, we have exported movie files. So let's just turn off my other video tracks, because I've got a lot of video tracks in there that I'm working with because I'm debugging how I can do this particle fire here. But see, I have a whole bunch of different movie files, and all of these movie files are exported directly from Storyboard Pro. So let me just turn off the sound for a second there, because I have some sound scrubbing going on there. So all of these Storyboard Pro files, they export out as separate movies into Premiere, and it also brings the audio down there as well. So then what you can do is, as you're working, you can add a second video track, and you can lay on top of it the final versions of those scenes, so that you always have an up-to-date version that has the latest information in it. Now, in the case of something like my particle fire here, we had some drawn fire at the beginning, and then we decided we wanted to replace that with particle fire. So now I'm going in and I'm trying out different options and different ways of doing the particle fire to see what I like the best. And then at the end, we're hopefully going to have a really nice looking particle fire. So it's just a matter of trying some things out to see what works best. And so that's basically the way that the working edit works. You're always going to have one version of your file that will be the most latest and up-to-date version. Even if you're just a home user who's working on your own project, this project here, the key, this project is only 1 minute long. It's 1 minute and 10 seconds long, but it has 46 scenes in it. In other words, 46 different camera moves. So even in a short project, even if it's a webisode or something that you're doing from home, it can really very quickly get complex if you don't plan things appropriately. So planning things first in Storyboard Pro is going to make your life so much easier, because now you have everything laid out. You know exactly what you need to do. All you have to do is open up your scene files in Harmony or Animate or Animate Pro and get started on the animation. And then you can bring everything together in your edit suite to check out what it looks like. You don't have to use something as complex as Premiere. You could even use something as simple as QuickTime Pro. But it's up to you on what you'd like to use to actually do the editing. I just happen to like Premiere because it's already on my machine. So let's go back to Storyboard Pro now, and we'll finish up with the last export options that we want to look at, which are CSV, Toon Boom, and FBX. So let's look at this CSV for a second here, because the CSV is something that I was kind of alluding to in one of the earlier tips that I did on Storyboard Pro when I was talking about naming the panels or naming the layers appropriately. And I was saying that because when you name things the right way, you can keep track of that information when you go into the next stage in the pipeline. So in your exported CSV here, you've got the name of the scene, the name of the panel, how many frames are in the scene, how many frames are in the panel, all of the captions with the content of the captions, and here's the really exciting one, all of the layers with all of the content of the layers. So it gives you your first pass at what you need to do for your production management in the case of a studio. In the case of an individual, it's just a really nice guide that you can have to work with. And some people who are on smaller projects will track their projects through Excel. They'll have an Excel spreadsheet that they can say what stage it's in, whether it's completed or if it's in progress, so you can go directly from here to that. And if you're going to work with a management software like Toon Boom Manager, then this export information also goes directly to Manager. So lastly, if you're doing animation, you might be doing live action, but if you're doing animation, then if you're doing animation in 2D, you can export to Toon Boom, and it will create one project for each scene file in your storyboard scene, and it's going to name it the same as it will name it in your storyboard file. So you can go from here to Animate or Animate Pro. If you're using Harmony, you just need to make sure that you have the consulting license installed for Storyboard Pro. And if you don't know what that is, then you can just go ahead and contact Toon Boom. But basically, if you have the consulting license, it gives you the export to Harmony option. And Harmony Offline is for those of you who are using Harmony standalone. And then if you're working in a studio, you can go to the database. And so database is going to create a database for you. And then the Harmony version is down here at the bottom. We don't have Harmony 10 yet as an option from here, even though Harmony 10 has been released, because Storyboard Pro doesn't have a new version since Harmony 10 came out. But you can always export to Harmony 9.2, and these files can be opened and saved in Harmony 10 if you're using Harmony 10. So the same or similar thing can be used if you're going to 3D, so you can export to FBX, and we'll create one FBX file for each scene file in your storyboard project. And so this is a Storyboard 3D only option. It's not in Storyboard Pro 2D, but the FBX option I've described in a bit more detail also when I did the storyboarding tip on storyboarding a 3D space. Because the thing about this one is that if you have 3D models in your scene, or if you have 3D scene planning, it will export that as well. But even if you have just a plain 2D storyboard, you can export to FBX, and it will give you the option to have the image files in your 3D scene with the sound attached to it, so it still gives you a working edit to work off of. So that's really it for Storyboard Pro and the export options. So this is why it's a full pipeline solution, because everything that you do in Storyboard Pro you can use in the next stage in the pipeline. And this is extremely powerful if you think about it, because what you can do here is you can really save time and effort. And even if you're working on an individual project, as you can see with that 1 minute project, 1 minute is 50 scenes pretty much. It's a lot of work. So organizing your work is going to help you to do it faster and more effectively. But also, if you're working in a studio or you're working in a group and you have multiple people working on a project, then you can have the entire team working together on the project, from storyboarding all the way through to animation or live action or whatever else it is that you're working on. So that's it for my little intro to Storyboard Pro, and hopefully you can see some of the reasons why it won an Emmy, because of the wonderful added value that it brings to your productions. So then we'll take a new subject next week, thinking of possibly talking about particles, but we'll see what we get to. So hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you guys next week. Take care.